This is a Soulfire production. Welcome to Mother. No, it's Mother. Welcome to Mother, the show where we can explore our inner mothers to actualize our greatest selves. Through interviews with incredible guests, live coaching sessions, and my own experiences, we're going to dive deep into embracing feminine values and reparenting ourselves. So be prepared to show up, hold space, and be mothered in a way you never have before, but have always needed. It's time we rewrite the Mother Code. Well, hello and welcome to the podcast today. I am super excited to have a guest, and we have with us today Jessica Jackson. So I'm going to say a couple things just to kind of get the ball rolling, but much better to hear from her. But I recently met Jessica Jackson because she is the founder of Thriving in Motherhood Podcast. She's the host of that podcast, and I highly, highly recommend tuning into it. I've listened to many episodes and they're amazing. You're doing such a beautiful job with this podcast because what I love about it is it's very grounded. There's such practical, apply right now, things that you can do in your life, as well as visionary. And I know we'll get into more of that and really how to make mothering more than just surviving, but thriving in it. So that's what the podcast does. You also have the Soaring Mothers Summit, which I get to be a part of, and I'm super excited about that. But that's a beautiful offering that you have, and we'll hear more about that. And you have a planner and other things to really support moms. But then to say a little bit about you, you're a homeschooling mother. You have this business of 4. Let's just throw that in there. I gotta hear about that because I have 2, and I just have never been able to imagine having more than that. But you do it, and I think it's amazing. So, bringing out the balance between running a household, creating a strong family culture, which I'd love to get into, working on your own projects and keeping life happening, but keeping yourself happening. And that's some of what I know we want to get into today. So without further ado, let's hear more from you, Jessica, and we'll get the ball rolling.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I am so excited to be here because I love what you do. I mean, your very first episode on this podcast is about creating vision in motherhood. And so I just love how you support women and mothers in all different seasons of life. So when I became a mom, 9 years ago now, so not as seasoned as you, but a little bit of practice, I just really wanted to love it. I wanted to be home with my kids. It was the dream. And I struggled so much. It was so hard, right? Everybody understands this, but it was really hard for me. And I think now I know I probably had postpartum depression and anxiety and things like that, but I had no clue at the time. We had just moved across the country. My husband started grad school. We didn't have a car that worked. So I was in a cinder block little apartment with my daughter, and we didn't know anybody. And then soon we moved to Kansas. We moved for the summer for summer work. And we moved back to a new place. We were moving all the time. And during these first 2 years, I just floundered. I mean, honestly, I never got really good traction. And I had a friend come visit me one time when we were doing our stint in Kansas City for the summer, and she swept the floor after our kids ate breakfast. She had her little daughter, and I was like, "Is that what moms are supposed to do? Are moms supposed to sweep the floor?" I had no idea. I guess I could sweep the floor. I had no clue what I was supposed to be doing. I was very successful as a student. I was a very good teacher. No clue at this motherhood thing. So when my second son was born, my daughter had just turned 2, and I ended up getting very, very sick with something called C. diff. I contracted it at the hospital, and it was very, very serious. I ended up going back 2 weeks postpartum with my newborn to nurse with me, fighting for my life.
Wow.
Oh and it was a very, very hard season. But during that time, I just realized okay, I have 2 kids. I want to live. I want to live again. And so that's where I became very focused and very serious about figuring out what I wanted motherhood to look like. And the way that I started was looking at every single planner on the face of the planet, because I figured there had to be a way to take all of these things in my head and put it on paper and make it happen. There just had to be something. And so while I'm like literally dying, trying to stay alive, I'm coping when I wasn't so sick that I was just like sleeping. I kind of got out of that, like just sleeping in the hospital phase. But when I got home and I'm trying to recover and nurse my baby and, you know, other people are taking care of my 2-year-old, I'm like scrolling on my phone, looking at every single planner option. And I was like, but that doesn't quite work. It doesn't quite work. It doesn't quite work. There's more thoughts. So what I ended up doing is spending 3 years creating this planner to help me create my vision for motherhood and then bring it forward every single day. Because I knew that that was a missing piece for me.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where things started for me and where I started to get some traction on like owning my motherhood, not just like existing in it and letting it happen to me.
Or letting it happen to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Keep going. That's great.
Yeah. And we talk about like the 3 pillars of thriving on my podcast, but that's where the first pillar vision came from. Just this idea for me, like that's my personal, like, this is why you need a vision because otherwise you just don't know what to do. Like,
no. Well, and you might like have an idea or a list of things to do, or you see, and it becomes a list or even goals, but without vision, like they're not as fulfilling. And you might even check things off every day and plan, but the vision gives it life. It gives it the substance
ownership.
And the reason. Yeah. And ownership.
Ownership. Because otherwise it's just like, that's why you're a victim, right? Because you have to do all these things. You don't even want to do it. Right. And then part of it too, like that vision also is just like, what do we love? You mentioned like a strong family culture, for us, that means we started cargo biking. Like I have a huge bike, orange bike with a big bucket on it. And I throw my kids into it. And because I love that idea, that seemed like a cool thing to me, or we're always building things or making projects. And that was part of my vision too. So so that was kind of the building blocks. We moved to Connecticut when my husband finished grad school. Now we had 3 kids in tow. And I know it just keeps going. And during that time, I had followed all these like minimalist moms that are like declutter, 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 and you'll have a clean house. And I was like, I have gotten rid of lots of stuff here, but this house still is not clean. I don't know what you guys are talking about. And that's where I understood this concept of structure. Like we need to have things that are happening every day to keep the household running smoothly, right? Like you can't just have not lots of stuff. You need to pick up your house, and there needs to be homes for things, and there needs to be training for the kids, and we need to know when we're doing things. And so that's where the second pillar, structure, came in. Once I had vision, now I still had fires I was putting all day long, and I had to learn how to structure things so there weren't so many fires. That's the structure pillar. But as we're in Connecticut now, and I've got kind of these 2 pillars, and my life looks like it's supposed to, and the days are running pretty smoothly, and I'm dying inside. And I remember calling my friend saying like, my life looks like I want it to, but I'm just checking off the boxes and there's no joy. She's like, well, that's really sad. And I was like, well, thanks. Like, that's not very helpful.
That emotion, right?
Yeah. Anyway, but what I realized there is I was missing my 3rd pillar, which is the soul pillar. And that was the mental, emotional, spiritual, physical health. And while I might have had bits and pieces of it, there were some serious gaps in my cognitive distortions, the way I was thinking about, my life and motherhood. And what was really neat is that once I was able to address those and put those into place, all of a sudden I like woke up to this amazing life that I felt like I because I had that vision and because I had that structure, I kept doing. I never gave up, but it felt like I was pushing a boulder up the mountain every day. But when I was able to get that 3rd soul pillar kind of propped up into place, my life became awesome. And I woke up and I was so glad that I had never given up, that I had never stopped trying to make this happen. So that is kind of the story of where these 3 pillars came up and where my motherhood journey began.
I want to hear more about them, Jessica, but thank you. And what I love is how they emerged from you and your experience, right? This wasn't like, oh, I'm off on the side, like observing mothers or trying to act like I have it all figured out and here's the recipe, right? But, here's what I figured out for myself because so there was something that was allowing you to go, or at least moments to go inside yourself and see what you wanted or needed, or, and then you made it happen, which I think in itself is a good message to people, but, to mothers, right? Like to follow that intuition and not say like, oh, well, that woman that's sweeping the floor, like, that's what I should do. Okay, I'll just start sweeping the floor. Like, she seems happy. I don't know. And we're looking outside ourselves, but this sounds like very much you continually going inside and looking at what was going to work for you. And then I'm just going to say, assuming and deciding it's going to work for your family. Like this, I'm going to lead the way in our family culture. And we can talk more about that. And then we'll include everybody, but this ties to something I feel really strongly about, that I think moms are the quality control in the family. Like we do hold more of the being. And if we're satisfied, everyone else will be, right? And so if I get myself in line and with these 3 pillars, it sounds like it's a beautiful structure to help do that. Everyone's going to benefit, right? But
absolutely.
I love that it's so like you-centered, but serves everyone. So I just said a lot. Does that resonate with you? And how, how does that strike you?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, So each of these pillars has an identity, and the identity of the structure pillar is that you're the leader. You're the leader in your home. And so a good leader in my mind isn't a dictator. A good leader is looking at the strengths of everybody in your family. You are helping co-create a vision with them, because when people buy into what they create. So this isn't me like, this is what I like, let's do it. It's being very aware and attuned into what my family like. So for example, my children love gardening. They have I was sick with this. So we moved again to Georgia, and I had my fourth pregnancy. And during this time, I'm very sick. I get very sick and I can't walk. So I pretty much not a very high functioning pregnant person. So during this time, my kids have pretty free reign, and they use their time by trying to grow things in the Georgia mud in front of our house, which was lovely and mildly a challenge, mildly successful, but they loved it so much. And they just love plants. They love herbs. They love gardening. They love foraging. So part of our vision this year, part of my vision as being this leader in my home, we just built a ginormous garden installation in our backyard. We have all of these garden beds. We have arches. Have I ever been a super successful gardener? Mildly, but it's something where we have this vision as a family that we love growing food, all of us. And so we made that part of our family vision, part of our family culture, to be outside in that garden all the time. And so that's just like one example of what I think a real leader is. And in the creating the family culture, it's a very collaborative family experience, but it cannot come if mom's in a place of desperation. I am not capable of doing those things when I am truly in that survival state, either survival because I don't have opinions, or survival because we don't have the structure in place to be able to do anything extra, or surviving because the way that I'm thinking has me depressed or anxious, or just feeling like I can't and I'm not in control of my life.
Yeah, so well said. Would love for you to say a little bit more about that. I kind of get, obviously the three pillars help, move you away from that space, and, not live in some of those spaces of desperation and thriving. But can you say a little bit more, like, what are the things that support you in being in the space of vision and not desperation?
Well, I think first of all is this idea that your family is only as strong as the weakest link. And oftentimes that can be us moms because we're so focused on other people and our families. And so I count too, like everybody in the family matters here. And that includes me. And so I think that's the first thing, is just taking ownership that it's okay to take up space in your own home. It's okay to take up space in your family. It's okay to have needs and wants and desires. And that doesn't diminish anybody else. But if you're diminishing yourself, it's really hard to lean into and really embrace each individual person in your family. So you count. So I'd say that's one thing.
And not to be under, the you count, I think, is sometimes one of the biggest hurdles for women, and moms to reorient to, right? Because we're such natural caregivers, and, that's reinforced by our culture and our families. And like, that's what we're supposed to do, like give to everybody. And you might fit in the picture a little bit, or if at all, but you are reframing that, and again, underlining how important that is, right?
Yeah. And I've only seen it add to my family. So for example, I love music. I love playing the ukulele. I love fiddling. So I'm doing that. I practice my instrument. I don't tell my kids what to do, but I also have instruments for them in the house. And lo and behold, because I love practicing, my daughter picks up ukuleles and figures out chords and sings. It spreads. Or I loved woodworking when they were little. And when they were at the playground, I would grab a carving knife and some wood, and I would carve little toys. Lo and behold, my kids love making toys and carving things all the time. And so I feel like, just like I like this vision, I needed to explore. That's why we do the summit, right? Because you need to explore. You need to expand your view of what's possible in motherhood. I feel like the more that I lean into my vision for myself, the things that I love, the more that it gives my kids ideas for what's possible for them and what do they love.
Yes.
And then it just kind of spreads. So I think instead of looking at it as something that takes away from your family, you have to look at it as something that gives life to your family.
Yeah, it gives life and models, right? We get so hung up on, just the things you said, oh, my kid has to learn an instrument. Like, I'm going to take them to woodworking class because that'll be good for their brain development and their, hand-eye coordination, or, all the things, versus, wow, just me being me. Like, how revolutionary, right? Well, in our time, revolutionary. Like, I'm who they see every day. I'm teaching without teaching all the time, right? So if I'm taking time for myself, one, they're learning that mom does things she enjoys, and that's great. And she's like really having fun doing that. Maybe I'll try it. And, it's so beautiful. I love this example, but, particularly, I'm not overthinking also, like, well, I got to do things so I model for my children. it's okay to have that in the back of your mind. Like, this is good. Sometimes
I do that
gets
with
a mom
unloading the
over the hump.
dishwasher
Yeah.
or cleaning bathrooms.
Exactly. It gets us over the hump sometime to say like, well, I'm going to do this for myself because I'm modeling. I don't care. If that's where you start, great. You got to start somewhere in really valuing yourself. So yeah, keep going. So
Well, I was
where
just
were
thinking
we?
too,
Yeah,
like, I want my kids to see like adulthood is awesome. I've got 3 daughters.
yeah,
I want them to see motherhood is awesome. And I think it's one of the things where we do have lots of responsibility as moms, but we also have, people talk about entrepreneurship. Like, you have all this freedom, you can do whatever you want, you have all this time. And I'm like, as moms, we do have responsibility, but we have the most flexibility of probably any role on the planet. We can structure our days however we want. We can bring whatever we want to into our lives. And so helping our kids learn life isn't just about getting stuff done and getting on screens, but life is so much broader and richer and includes really good relationships and activities and adventuring and games and outdoors. And like, life is broad and beautiful and wonderful. Like, we can do that together. Right. And it doesn't have to just be mom time or kids time. Like, this is also like, we're going to do this amazing life together.
Yeah. Beautiful. Let's see. I wanted to hear a little bit more about how you personally, and then how you support others in the soul pillar. I feel like pillar 1 and 2 are there kind of in service of pillar 3, so we can have more of pillar 3, but we also need some of pillar 3 to manifest 1 and 2. But anyway, they all go together.
They all go together. Yeah. And your session in the summit is so good on this, because you talk about the emotional intelligence. And so you are right in the soul pillar. I love how you talk about that. It's an incredible session. So much about the soul pillar for me is about the mind. Yeah. Becoming aware of the practices of like cognitive behavioral therapy. And there's so many people that have kind of spawned different models and things off this, but the idea of like, your thoughts trigger your feelings trigger, your actions. So I'd say a huge part of the soul pillar is becoming aware of your own thoughts. And are the thoughts that you're thinking helping you, or are they hurting you? And are they creating the actions that you want or not, and the results that you want in your life or not? Because I think a lot of our suffering comes from our thoughts. Like, I have hard pregnancies, like really hard pregnancies. I'm in extreme pain most of the time. I cannot walk. I cannot sleep well. I cannot move. I shuffle barely. And I'm throwing up all the time. I'm very sick. And so when I was pregnant with my 3rd child, I was the epitome of complete miserable. Like, I did not think I could. I mean, I tried, but it just consumed me. I felt like I couldn't get squeezed anymore. Like, it was just so hard. And so for my 4th pregnancy, I spent a lot of time mentally figuring out like training and preparing for being able to have a thriving mindset, even in survival seasons. And it was a night and day difference. So one of the big things was just learning to focus my mind by asking questions during the day. And I had a lot of questions, but this was something that would stop me from spiraling. So my 4th pregnancy was my hardest of all. My body shut down the worst, and I was as sick as I'd ever been, but mentally I was okay. And I didn't suffer through that pregnancy. It was a huge difference. And I would attribute that to the work of the soul pillar. So there's a lot of questions, but my 4 favorite to start with, like if you're just new to this idea, is how we end the day. Because when we're tired at the end of the day, that's when we can think some really awful things about our life and ourselves and not want to wake up the next day and do it again. And so the 4 questions I love asking was, actually, I'll do 5 questions I were like asking were, what were my big wins today? So, and anything could be a big win. For me, when I was pregnant, it was, I laid on the bed and I cut snowflakes out with my 3-year-old, even though I had thrown up before and after. Like, that was a big win, right? So nothing exciting, but we really focus, especially in these survival seasons, but always, who are you being? Because we can't always control what we can do, but we can decide who we're going to be. The next question is, what was I grateful for today? That's a classic one. How did I see?
Important, right?
It is important.
I don't want to minimize it, even though lots of people are getting hip to it. It's a big one. They're all big, but I love that.
It's one. Super helpful. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The next one is, how did I see the hand of the Lord in my life today? So if God's part of your life, I like to see that, how he's a part of my life, or your spiritual practice, universe, whatever.
Your spiritual practice. Yeah.
And then what were some magic moments today? And often those are relationship based, being able to see, because so often we get stuck with mom guilt, man, and it just drags us down. And when we can instead think of all of these, and it's like with other people, right? What you did or what you didn't do, or how you yelled at your child, all these mom guilt things, and instead focusing on magic moments. And then the 5th question was, what were some unhelpful thoughts that I had today and how can I change them? So constantly just being aware of those stories that I'm telling myself. So, and those things rewire your brain. Like, positive psychology has proven, I'm sure you know about this a lot, right? But it changes your brain.
Yeah. And that we need that rewiring. We need that practice, right? Because through our upbringing, through culture and, repetitive, not so great messages or habits or behaviors or how we had to I'm going to call it survive, just because there's a whole range of experiences we have in our upbringings, but we're all like, little beings trying to survive, and we adapt roles. We decide things about the world and what it can take and what we can do. So what I love about what you're talking about, Jessica, is these are like steps to rewire and transform or, personally grow. And that's, one of my big things is in thriving in motherhood is I love how you term it, is we can grow up with our children. These things, that rewiring is you growing. It's you transforming. It's you imbuing yourself with different thoughts and positive ones where maybe there weren't as many of those. So I think this is a really critical piece. Now, are you saying you do this kind of right before you go to bed? Like, what's your practice? What's your kind of practical practice? Like, do you journal about this? Like,
so there's two. There's the planner that helps you create your vision, make it reality. There's the journal that helps you make the brain work.
I knew that, but I forgot. And that's fine. Perfect.
Yeah. So, but the journal has these questions. So real life, I have 4 kids. I'm homeschooling. I'm managing a household. Do I journal every night? Absolutely not. Right. But because I've asked these questions for so long, I'll think them while I'm going to sleep. Like I'll think them in the morning when I'm taking a shower. I'll do them in the morning when I'm doing my scripture study quiet time. And if I haven't done them in a while, I will catch myself starting to spiral into those unhelpful patterns of thinking. Like it just happens. Life is hard.
Yes.
And so when I catch myself starting to go down, I pull it back out and I start making it a priority to write it back down again and get myself back on track. And I even discovered if I can do this once a week, my overall mood and energy goes way up.
Hi, I'm so excited to share with you my 2024 Spring Equinox Self-Mothering Retreat that's happening this March 2024. And I would love for you not only to consider it, but to attend. But in considering it, hey, just knowing that you would be leaving cold weather, if that's the space that you're in, and coming down to just magnificently beautiful, warm, nourishing place of Zihuatanejo, Mexico. Zihuatanejo meaning land of the goddess women, and coming to really take time for yourself. Okay. And that I am learning more and more isn't just a nice thing to do or something extravagant or something selfish. It's essential. And I really want you to take it seriously, to consider, just think about what would it take for me to go. It's a 5.5-day retreat. Getting from where you are, getting there, landing there, and then being in a space that is all about you. It's all about nourishing you. It's all about tuning into you, using everything around us, the nature, the food, the beautiful people, the rituals, ceremonies. I bring it, we really bring it. And we go deeper and deeper as the days go on, and we release, we let go, we bring in what is nourishing, what is empowering, what is that space of just really divine feminine energy. And we do it in the community of women. It's not for everyone. I will be honest, if that idea of leaving and not making it work, or it's just too hard, not for you. If the idea of, spending that amount of time inwardly focused and going to that level of self-awareness doesn't sound like something you're willing to do or put the time and energy into, then it's not for you. And it's good to know that, right? So this is for people who are serious about what it means to mother themselves, what it means to take time for ourselves, and that gift and what that gift can bring to us. It was originally right after my fall retreat. It filled right up. But now some people, it turns out, are not able to come. So I do have a handful of openings. And if you're listening to this and you're willing to take that step, please reach out to me. We can do a discovery call, or you can put a deposit down. I would love that. And you can do that by going to my website, www.drgertrudelyons, DrGertrudelyons.com. Go to events, and there you go. It'll all be there. There's a beautiful page there for you to explore. I look forward to hearing from you and then seeing you on my spring retreat.
Oh, 100%. And what I want to underline in that is sometimes I think we have a misconception that, oh, I do this for a while and then I'm fixed, then it's done. And, that's kind of the whole growth mindset and the concept of dedication that one of my mentors, Dr. Judith Wright, in her evaluating process of transformation, what a key factor is dedicating, getting that, this is a lifelong journey. Right. And I might shift that practice a little bit. I might, like you said, at first, it's probably really important to journal it, as a new habit and understand how hard it is and challenging to start a new habit. And even as good as it is for us, we have to set up structures, for a new habit like that. And then get that this keeps me healthy, right? This is like eating good food or exercise. Like this will be something I need to do lifelong. And that's a good thing, right? Instead of like, oh man, I thought I could just like do this for a little bit and then I'm good. Right. But
well, and for me, it's exciting. It's like fun.
Yeah.
It's become fun to even discover, like when I discover a new thought that I've been thinking that wasn't helpful, I'm like, whoa, that's amazing. Like new breakthrough. Yes. What can I do? Like it's a fun adventure. I feel like it's the work of my life is constantly elevating my thoughts.
I do too. And that new discovering new aspects of myself, through that it isn't. And that takes us again from just the surviving to the transformation. Like, yes, this keeps me sane, keeps me from kind of slipping back into old habits. And there's those moments of new discovery, new frontiers within myself. Right. And that's like so beautiful and key. Now, is this another thing that you would say, like, would you say like your kids see you doing and they model in some way? Do you do this in some way as a family and I'm not saying you should or have to. I'm just curious.
Yeah, this is something where we try and bring it around the dinner table because my kids are 9, 7, 4, and 2. It has not become an integral part of all their lives yet. As my oldest is just starting to read and write, but still where it's hard. So it's something that I definitely want to equip them with because I didn't have these skills when I was an adult, became an adult. So it's something we're going to work towards, but they're still pretty little.
That's great. But I also truly hold that whether they're seeing you explicitly do it or not, they feel it. It's in your family atmosphere. They don't have to like know and see everything, but overtly seeing the ways you take care of yourself and, the ones that are done behind closed doors are all just as powerful, I believe, because of the whole family system, right? You all are connected and you have a complex family system with, 6 of you. That's a lot of dynamics, a lot of interaction. So this is going to be totally out of curiosity for me. As I said, I'm a mother of 2, and that seemed like a lot. Like I had my second child, I was like, oh my God, I don't think I can do this. Like literally the first 2 months, I was like, I really like, I remember hitting this point, like at about 2 months, like, okay, maybe I can do this. Like maybe this is possible. So you're juggling a lot with 4 and, dynamics amongst each other and all of that. And I don't know, what you might want to say about that, but I'd love to hear just kind of a window into, parenting, mothering, being a family of 6.
Well, first of all, I will say one of the thoughts I uncovered last week was I don't have to keep proving to myself that I can do this. I've been doing this for a long time now.
Yes.
Because I caught myself feeling like I have to prove something. I don't.
No.
But basically, we've been very intentional with the moment we bring a child home from the hospital. And even before they're born, we tell them we're best friends. This is your best friend. And so that's a dialogue that we have from day one with all of our kids. Even when I had my 2-year-old and my newborn, you're best friends. We're best friends. And they have grown into that. That has been true. They are all best friends. So we do have that.
I've tried to unpack sometimes. My husband and I have this in our vows, like that we'll be best friends, but that takes work, right? Like we kind of have ideas about that. And I'm going to have you keep going, but it's a big one and important. Like some people just think that's like, oh, be best friends. We'll just be nice to each other all the time. Can you say a little bit about what best friends means to your family?
Yep. Our kids have lots of time together. So we have a very intentional, like there's many reasons why we homeschool, but one of them is so that our kids have lots of time together to create those friendships. And so they are doing, I think one of the best ways to build friendships is by doing things together. They are doing things together all day long. They are the most creative bunch of kids I have ever met. Nothing in our house can be safe. It is going to be rebuilt into something else. It's going to be a tree house, a coal mine, a horse, an elephant ride, like you name it, they are going to create it with whatever they can find in our house. And so I think just really being open to kids doing things together, giving them time and space for that, resources to do that. Again, it's all free. They're just foraging, but not being so tight to our house has to look perfect all the time, right? Like giving them space to have those experiences. The other thing we do is we read lots of stories together and they listen to lots of stories together. So we have this shared culture of, first of all, I read to them all the time, but every day they listen to an audiobook together. If you want to know, this is where I get my quiet time in or my work or my nap. There's a real window. Listen to an audiobook every day. So they have this whole other universe that they've created amongst the four of themselves that involves all of these literary characters that are a part of the fabric of the relationship. So there's that. The other thing we talk about, because the other part of relationships that are hard is when things aren't going well, right? When there's butting heads and whatever. And so one of the things we talk about with our kids all the time is, are you attacking a person or solving a problem? And that is something that we use even at a young age that helps, right? Because a lot of the things that break down our friendships is when we start attacking each other. And that does not mean they learn that skill yet, but that is what we help them navigate.
That's awesome. Just to be able to separate out and distinguish and take ownership and responsibility, right? And teaching them that at a really young age in relationship is so valuable. Remind me how old your oldest is? 9?
Almost 9.
Almost 9.
October.
Okay. So when you do family listening time, like, is it, the kids listen to something, do they listen to it separately or they all listen to
all
the
together,
same story together? Okay.
All together. And they're moving. It's on a little Kindle. It's the only thing we have a screen for. They don't even use the screen, but they carry it around with them and it can be inside, outside, all around. And they're doing something always creative while they're listening. They do not sit still ever.
Yeah, that's great. And now, was homeschooling something you always thought you wanted to do? Was this a pandemic thing? How did you decide this is what we're going to do as a family and I'm going to lead the way?
Okay. Well, when I was 8, I walked into a family's house and they were homeschoolers and I saw their homeschool room and I thought, Mom, this is what I want to do. And she said, absolutely not. You're going to school. And we were homeschooled. I was homeschooled 3 years, once in middle school and once in high school because we were living internationally, but it was like survival schooling, not amazing. And so when I became a mom though, and I was in that period with, I had the 2 kids and I was trying to figure out my vision. I had this thought that I could read the homeschooling books and I could skip all the homeschooling stuff and just read that little section they have about household management, because I thought that homeschoolers have to do everything I have to do plus school. So they must have some secrets that I don't know. So I started doing that. And then eventually I started reading more of the other parts of the book. And then I was like, oh, this sounds really interesting. And so I spent, as my daughter was 2 to 4, dove really deep into all things homeschooling. And that became part of the fabric of what I wanted my family culture to be and what we wanted our vision to be. So we had already been way into it before the pandemic, which was such a gift for our family.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You wouldn't even have known, it's not well, this will be good if there's ever a pandemic too. Cause
well, now we've got that as well, but no, it very much was this idea of, I wanted 18 years is short. Yeah. I feel I'm almost halfway through at the time my daughter will be in my home probably. And it felt really long during that first 2 years, but now it's just going so fast.
Yes.
And so I want to be there for it. They're going to be best friends, but I need time with them. I want time with them too. And I want us to be able to just build this great experiential learning life together. So it's here to stay.
Well, I love it. I think them having this solid foundation and working relationships, it's very Alfred Adler-esque, of starting with mom and then, that relationship and dad. Then it's our job to start, showing them how to have that in the world, but then doing that within your family structure really strongly. I can really, get the value of that. So then, obviously they're going to go out into the world and we're training them to be independent, strong, healthy little beings. They have that foundation and skills to go do that. I don't know if that was part of, the thinking in this, or because I think some people, and I'll admit I've had it. It's well, how do you how do the kids learn to socialize with other kids if they're homeschooled? Because that's one of the big advantages of going to school is you have to deal with school. So how do you navigate that aspect?
Yeah. Well, our kids do see other kids. We have a church community
Yeah,
that
I'm
they
sure.
spend times with. And, my daughter goes to violin lessons and so they do navigate that. But one of the things is, I went to 10 schools growing up. So I was
Oh
constantly
my
being the
gosh.
new kid in all these schools. And I feel like those kids were not helping me have social skills. They're just mean sometimes. So I kind of figure, why don't we just help model for our kids healthy relationships, help them learn what healthy relationships are, help them practice because I mean, you can do this whether they're in homeschool or public school or whatever your situation is. And then, as we're with people, we practice that and we role play that and we try and get better at that so that they are ready when they're adults, but ready right now. Like we want them to be ready now and equip
Yeah.
them right now. So it's something that we're intentional about as opposed to maybe just feeling like if we throw them in with kids their age, then they'll be socialized and they'll be
That's
fine.
something that's going to
Yeah.
be good for them, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so true. It's so true. I think sometimes, well, we'll never say I'm immune to any of this. We kind of want to send our kids to school and have them like let them take care of it, let the
Oh yeah, I've had those
teachers and
thoughts.
just kind
Totally.
of assume but then we don't take responsibility. Are they getting it there? Is it like what we, what we aspire
Well,
to?
and having been a teacher, I have endless empathy and compassion for teachers, but there's a lot of kids, there's a lot going on. And I know like when I was teaching, I was taking care of the kids that had that were the loudest, that had the biggest problems that were,
Yes.
and that's just the reality of having one adult with a whole bunch of kids and everyone's doing their best, but it's a different dynamic.
I love it. Well, and I think challenging, this is one of the myths that I talk about and, myths around mothering is, looking outside of ourselves for the answers or like, oh, all the people around me, that's how they do it. So it must be the right way to do it. So everybody sends their kids to school or, everybody, sweeps the floor, because we see a couple sweep the floor. But when you're doing something that isn't the norm, you're setting yourself up for possibly like criticism and things like that. And I home birthed, and that was unusual, right? That wasn't the norm. And wow, I mean, I had to take care of myself around. Some people thought that was amazing and great. And others were like, that's like I had someone say to me, like, that's the most selfish thing I've ever heard. And I was like, so, but I think that's where we need that pillar, the soul pillar. Again, I'm going to talk about that you talk about where I need some skills emotionally to, be willing to do something different because it feels right to me. And it's
And I
my
think
choice and how I'm doing it.
yeah, that and vision. For me, it's like I
Yes.
am very confident in this vision. I feel like I co-created it with God. I feel like it, in my husband and my family. And I really believe each one of us needs to have a totally unique life because we all have different family circumstances. We all have different missions to fulfill. We all have different challenges in our, individually and with our children and skill and like great things about us too. So I think that until we can give each other that grace as well of owning like we're going to be unique, they're going to be unique. Let's cheer each other on. Let's stop trying to tear each other down. Let's just celebrate that we're doing something different and then let's pull from the best, right? Because exploring is essential. I mean, for me, like seeing how other moms are doing things, that is so important. And then once I gather all of this data, then I need to go back in and say, okay, it's got to be me. What matters to me? What do I need to parse out?
Yeah. What do I like about what they did? What, what doesn't fit for me, and that's something I also, when I'm helping people support them in writing a vision, going back to our family of origin, because that's where all that wiring happened, and there were probably positive things about being in 10 schools and challenges. So in my vision, and how I'm going to do it, but not just out of reactivity, not like, well, I'm going to not do that. I think sometimes, and that's a big place vision really helps is get us out of that, like just not doing it how my family did it or not doing it how others are. But well, I might not like that part, but I like this and bringing it together in a vision. So
I love that.
Really
I had not thought of it that way before. I like that.
Oh, good. Well, we're adding to it. So I want you to talk a little bit about the Soaring Mothers Summit, which this is going to air after it, but people will still be able to access it, right? So whenever this show drops, like it may not be able to get it live, but we'll have access to it. So I'm going to have you talk about that and how people can find you and get a hold of you. And then I have one more question.
Okay. So thrivinginmotherhoodpodcast.com. That's my hub. Everything will be there. I'm also on Instagram at thrivinginmotherhood.podcast, but you can access the thing, planner, journal, summit, podcast, any other, courses that I sell are all there.
Great. And just say a little bit about the actual Soaring Mothers Summit, because this is
is this your second one or third or what?
This is the second one. So it is 30 women that I've gathered together that all care just like you about moms, right? And we all just come together with this hope of helping moms that feel like they might be surviving, but they want to soar. They want to love motherhood. They want to be able to enjoy their life. And so we come together to do what we've been talking about here of just explore together, get lots of different ideas of what's possible in motherhood to really expand our vision of what's possible, and then give you space then to kind of whittle down and decide what do you want to do. And then on the fourth day, I will teach a class about how to bring that into your everyday life. Like, how do you start making this vision a reality? So that is really the purpose of the summit.
It's beautiful. What a beautiful offering and gift to moms. And I hope everybody listening shares it, goes to it and does it, because there's going to be both, like you said, practical and visionary, and like all the pillars are represented, right? So
yeah,
that's amazing. Wonderful. So last question is, so, my platform or, kind of the summary of what I do is called Rewriting the Mother Code. So what does rewriting the Mother Code mean to you?
Interesting question. For me, I think it comes down to the conglomeration of everything we've talked about, but it's this idea that there's so much negativity in the world surrounding motherhood. Like the social norm, I think, around motherhood is very negative, as you are well aware, just a mom, victim, burnout, all of those type words, hot mess mom I've heard, which I'm like, I don't even know where that came from. But for me, it's raising an entire generation, us and the generation forward, breaking this cycle and instead raising powerful, strong women who are ready to go forward and do the work that they're here to do and are ready to build strong families, helping empower their children to go do the work that they need to do, because we need a world that is full of people that are capable of being a force for good. So I love the work you're doing, but that's what it means to me.
Yeah. Oh, well, that means a lot to me. Or you just reflected and distilled and summarized it beautifully for you. So thank you. These are like little gifts to me, and everybody says something a little different, but always so beautiful. And I love yours. Love, love, love it. Thank you so much, Jessica, for this morning and being together, and can't wait for my listeners to hear you and find you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me on your show. And thank you for doing an awesome session on the Soaring Mothers Summit.
Thank you so much for choosing yourself and taking the time to listen to this podcast. As always, please rate, review, and subscribe to subscribe to Mother. It helps other people who need this message, aka all women, well, actually everybody, men included. I'm honored to have you on this journey in mothering yourself. Remember, change is uncomfortable, but it's beautiful, and it starts with us. And if you can't wait until next week's episode, follow me on Instagram and LinkedIn at Dr. Gertrude Lyons, or at my website, drgertrudelyons.com. I'll see you next time.